Hi, my name is Galen. I am a member of the Atlanta Horror Writers Association, and I write fantasy, horror, and I'm currently writing my first novel. This is a short piece entitled Watching Over Me, which appeared in the Fabulist, and it is me taking the angel story trope and trying to uh, do something a little bit unsettling with the idea of a guardian angel that isn't quite right. So this is Watching Over Me. My grandmother stared at the wall when we came to visit her in the nursing home in Santa Fe. The smell of sickness waited outside the room but didn't dare come inside. Shooting stars are angels, she told me as the evening shadows drew the shape of her motorized bed on the wall. Through the window, I thought I saw shooting stars, but they could have been reflections from the cars out in the parking lot. She told me the shooting stars were emissaries of God, their holy fire igniting gasoline on deep water. She told me, and I believed, that they were angels falling, hair awash in liquid flame, too hot for any human to catch and hold. When I awoke the next morning, there were no bodies, just deep black stains all over the road, hot when I touched them, sucking at the backs of my heels. My mother said it was tar. I didn't believe her. I was in my room when the angel first spoke to me. I came from heaven, it said. I need your help. I didn't know whether it was lying. I wasn't scared, even though I felt small and not fit to walk on angelic, blessed ground. In the Bible story, Moses took off his sandals because the ground was holy. I slipped off my high tops as a precaution. Angels were holy, I knew. I stared as it perched on the top of my bunk bed. I had begged and pleaded with my parents for a bunk bed, but I was too scared to sleep on the top bunk just yet. Now the angel sat there. What can I do? I'd asked. It leaned close and I felt heat, hot breath in my ear. It was the exact smell of pinyon pines in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The hot breath spoke of sprouting plants breaking through seed husks. It spoke of molten fire tearing through the foothills. It was the heat of the earth itself, baked and cracked in the afternoon sun. Stay with me, it said, and I nodded, because what could be wrong with that? Its breath was in my ear as I played hopscotch with Jonathan from up the road. Its voice was in the sound of the wind chimes as I ate dinner with my parents. When I asked my parents to set a place for it, they just laughed. The wind chime echoed the dull quality of their voices. I didn't think it wanted to leave me, not even when I had to go to school. But the angel wouldn't enter church. It stopped at the door, moving away from the candles and Jesus, glass tears and real-looking blood around the crown of thorns and the nails in his hands. I won't go in, it said, and I shook my head. That didn't make any sense. You're an angel, I told it. Maybe the fall had knocked all the thoughts from its head. But it wouldn't come any nearer. I thought perhaps it feared that musty church smell, the pews covered in burgundy. Maybe, for the angel, the church was only a pale imitation of heaven, a facsimile, a dream. You don't have to look, I said. You can just look down at the floor. I can't go in, it repeated, and it stepped away from me. I took its hand. I had never touched it before. Its skin was cool, like sea glass, and then it was burning me. Hotter than anything I'd ever touched before, hotter than the campfires my dad made when we used to camp with my grandparents when Grandpa was alive and Grandma wasn't in a home. When I pulled away, there was a raised white wheal, like dripping wax in the shape of its fingers. I didn't cry. It didn't come with me when my family went to see Grandma that afternoon either. As we left the edge of town, I saw it raise its hand. My grandmother was sitting in one of the wheelchairs. She looked straight at the wooden cross on the wall. Angels watch over you, she said. And then she talked about all the different angels clad in white, angels like wheels within wheels, and angels covered in wings and eyes and the words, holy, holy, holy. But she didn't describe anything like my angel. Why do angels exist? I asked. Her hand swept my shoulder, more like a pine branch than anything else. I looked down, touched it. Her skin was soft and shiny, blurring around her wedding ring, her watch with its dotted sapphires. Angels guard you in all your ways. She'd always smelled of Lysol and of baking. Now she smelled like nothing and hospital soap. The smell clung to my clothes even after we left the home. The angel was watching for us once we crossed back into town. The light was fading, and its shadow was long. Its eyes were flat like deep water, but with a phosphorescent green flame eating away in their depths. Who are you waving to? My mother asked, but I could tell she didn't expect a reply. The next morning, the top bunk was empty. I realized it as soon as the pale light broke through my window. I climbed up, felt the sheets. They were warm, as though they had just come out of the dryer. If I held them for too long, they would burn into my flesh. On the back of my hand, I still carried the angel's fingerprints, scorched remnants of its passing. I was already struggling to recall what the angel looked like. Despite my efforts to picture its face in my head, the image dissolved when I tried to grasp it. Slippery as dreams after waking, I picked at the burn with a dirty fingernail. New skin, frail as tissue paper, was already growing over the wound. It wrinkled in the morning light like my grandmother's hands. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karl Sigler. I am a member of the Atlanta Horror Writers Association, and today I am going to be reading a very short story called Birth Trauma. Jane's mother screamed louder than she had ever heard. It caused her to jump. A nurse put his hands on her shoulders and leaned down to her ear. "It's okay, little one. Your mommy's fine," he said. "This is normal when you have a baby." Jane looked over her shoulder at the nurse. His long, dark brown hair was pinned back under a small white hat. He stunk of cigarettes, which temporarily overpowered the smell of blood, metal, sweat, dirt, and disinfectant. His brown eyes were opened wide, just like his smile. He left his heavy hand on her shoulder. Another scream pulled her attention back to her mother. A nurse patted her mother's cheeks and brows, a scream slowed to an exhausted, heavy panting. Jane remembered the time Jason and his gang was chasing her. She had ducked behind a dumpster, sweating and so short of breath, it was hard to remain quiet. "You're doing great, Mama," the doctor coached. He sat on a small white stool between her legs. "Now push." Her mother took a rough breath. She closed her eyes tightly and her whole body tensed. Her face went dark red until she exhaled in another wail. One more push." The doctor's head moved briefly, revealing to Jane a red foot of her sibling pushed out from between her mother's splayed legs. The swollen calf pushed out another inch. The doctor grabbed the ankle and pulled gently. That's it. "Oh, gods," her mother screamed, collapsing back into the pillows piled behind her. The doctor held the leg up by its ankle and absently passed it to the nurse over his shoulder. Next to her mother was a metal overbed table draped with a long, wide sheet of white paper. The nurse wiped the leg down with a small, bloody towel and spun the leg by the ankle. Then he tossed the towel in a bin at his feet and gently laid the leg down on the table. The limbs were lined up, arm, leg, in the center of a dark red stain. "Okay, Mama, this is the hardest part, but we're in the home stretch. It's time to push again." Her mother moaned as she struggled to sit upright. A nurse put his hand on her shoulder and rearranged the pillows behind her. "Come on, Mama, let's push." The nurse behind Jane placed his right hand uncomfortably on her other shoulder. Her mother was barely able to inhale, but pinched her face and strained. She screamed until her mouth was opened as wide as it could in a soundless gape. Then she collapsed back in her pillow throne. "Yes," the doctor exclaimed. "It has a penis," holding up the torso. It squirmed in his hands, smooth like a giant grub, except for 2 nibbles and that small protuberance. Several of the nurses clapped briefly. The doctor handed the torso off. The nurse struggled to keep hold of it, but was able to place it beside the limbs on the table and began cleaning it off. The arms and legs came to life instantly. Another nurse rushed to keep them from falling onto the floor. The hand facing Jane gripped at the air. One nurse put his left hand on the chest of the torso and grabbed the squirming arm by the wrist. Her mother's panting built up to a scream again. "This is it, the last push," a nurse coached from behind her. "That's it," the doctor said. "Come on." Jane struggled to see around the doctor, but the nurse behind her kept his hands on her shoulders and kept her from moving too far away. He leaned down to her ear. "Your mom is doing great." Jane could tell that the nurse had taken a mint because now he smelled of menthol cigarettes, just like her Aunt Ruby used to smoke. Jane didn't want to look at him. With another hoarse scream, her mother contracted, her head nearly reaching her knees. "You're so close. There we go." The doctor caught the head and handed it to the nurse, who joined 2 nurses in trying to corral all the parts on the overbed table. Her mother collapsed again into her pillows and broke into tears of sheer exhaustion. The doctor stood up from the stool, walked around the delivery bed, and leaned close to her mother. "Congratulations," he said. He swung the metal overbed table around so it was in front of her. The 2 nurses struggled to keep the twitching parts together. The torso writhed while the head opened its mouth occasionally, pulling in enough air through its truncated windpipe for a short, noiseless scream. She looked up at the doctor, trying and failing to control her breath. She used the sleeve of her hospital gown to wipe the sweat from her face. All of the medical staff stepped back to the edges of the room. Her mother looked up at the ceiling with a massive inhale, picked up the torso with shaking hands. She picked up the head, and the doctor quickly stepped back to her side. I don't want to tell you, but if you start with the head, The limbs would be writhing in pain, and I mean the noise. She put the head with its eyes closed and lips quivering back on the table and picked up a leg. She looked up at the doctor, who gently nodded and retreated backward with the staff lining the walls. A nurse somewhere to the left of Jane whispered, "Doesn't she already have a kid?" The nurse behind her tightened his grip on Jane's shoulders. "Shh," he hissed. Jane watched the mother brace the torso tightly against her hip and struggle to press the squirming leg in. It popped in place with a squelching sound. Jane winced and tucked her chin to her chest. Her brother's head screamed noiselessly in puffs of air like a fish on a lakeshore as her mother picked up the other leg and then put it back down. She was sobbing and picked up an arm, wiped her eyes, and the baby's hand grasped at her hair. Jane saw a nurse across the room roll his eyes and scoff. He whispered to the nurse next to him, and they both stifled a laugh. The same nurse to Jane's left whispered, "Lord, she's going to be a horrible mother." The nurse dug his fingers into her shoulders, painfully tight. She bent her knees and rolled her shoulders, and he released the tension but kept his hands on her. "Quiet," he chastised. "Her daughter is right here." The loud snap of her brother's arm popping into his shoulder filled the room. Jane's eyes teared up, and she reached her hand up under her ponytail. She realized how cold and shaky her hands were as she stuck 2 fingers into the deep, fleshy notch in the back of her head. It itched. And that's it.